Hello, it's Rob from Fountain Pen Journey. Review time. Not just a review, this is a review and an opinion, my own opinion, and also asking a question. This is all about the Lamy 2000. Why do people love the Lamy 2000 so much? You know, why? What's it all about? Well, hopefully you're going to find this video useful. It's not just a review, there is a fair amount of information going on in this video. So it's a long video, so I'd advise you to just pause it right now. Go and get yourself a cup of tea, a beer, whiskey, whatever your tipple is, so that you can sit down and watch the rest of the video, because it is going to be quite long. Lamy 2000, two of them here. Why have I got two? Well, put it this way. The Lamy 2000 is out of my comfort zone for spending money on a fountain pen. So what I did, I go through eBay and I have a look for Lamy 2000s every now and then. And if there's one that comes up and I bid on it and it's, you know, within what I think is reasonable for the pen in the condition it's in, I'll put a bid in. And if I win it, I'll win it. And more times, often than not, I don't. But I have ended up with two of these pens. One's a fine nib, one's a medium nib. And these are great pens. I'm going to get this out there right at the start of this review. If I had to, you know, take my collection down to 5 pens, this would be one of my top 5. I don't know which one, but the Lamy 2000, either one of these would be in my top 5 pens, and it would be a no-brainer. It would be a case of, right, you can choose 5 pens and that's it. Well, Lamy 2000, yeah, I'll take that. That's one of them. 4 left to choose, so pretty good. I'm going to talk about the pen now. First off, Makrolon. It's made of black Makrolon. There is a stainless steel version available occasionally. I think there's a yew tree wood version available. There is, as of, where are we, September 2019, there is now also a special edition, or might even be a limited edition, Bauhaus edition, which is a very dark blue. But it's also hugely expensive, as are the other variants, so therefore they're way out of my price range. I'm not comfortable spending that sort of money on a pen. And you know, the black Lamy Makrolon it's you know, this is the classic. The stainless steel version, remember, it's stainless steel. It doesn't feel the same as Makrolon. Looks similar, but it's stainless steel. Shiny silver brushed finish. But at the end of the day, it's a stainless steel pen. It isn't this Makrolon, and it's the Makrolon in this design that, you know, this is the whole package. This is what the pen is about. It's a Bauhaus utilitarian design, and I love it. I love it because it's simple, but it's also, I don't know, also modern, contemporary, and retro all at the same time. It's a great pen. Stands the test of time. Late 60s, designed and released, and it is a design classic, no doubt about it. Almost all of that is due to this very iconic clip, which has Lamy on this. There we go. Lamy on the side of the clip there, and it is a sprung clip. Press down at the base and it opens up. I mean, you can use it however you want to, and these are very nice clips. But yeah, proper utilitarian Bauhaus design. Lovely clip. I have a soft spot for the 20th century, probably because I am part of that century itself. I love 20th century art, history, architecture, design, all the rest of it. And so many great things and bad things happened in the 20th century. Huge 100 years of absolutely mental history. All sorts of stuff. I mean, we had, you know, nations all over the place. The British Empire ruled half of the planet or more, and you know, we had 2 world wars, terrible world wars, and yeah, a lot went on. We had Art Deco, Art Nouveau before that, artistic stuff went through all the thing. We had the austerity of the 40s, the technology and the nuclear era in the 50s, 60s, and yeah, great century. So anyway, this pen hails from then, and to me, I mean, I love shipping. I think the QE2, the great liner that she was, you know, every bit the design icon in 1969 as the Lamy 2000 is. Sadly, she is no more. She is now a sort of pseudo floating hotel in Dubai, but you can still buy a Lamy 2000, and it is still essentially the same pen. Over the years, you will see that some Lamy 2000s have a white background with a black L for the Lamy logo on the finial of the cap, but other than that, not a lot else has changed. You do get silver finials on both of these pens. So anyway, black Makrolon. It's a resin impregnated with fibre to make it strong somehow. It's not a fiberglass, so before anyone starts jumping up and down going, no, it's not a fiberglass material. No, it's not. It's Makrolon. I'm not even going to go into the research behind Makrolon, but it is apparently quite a difficult material to work with. Lamy got it right. The Keiko Edge used Makrolon. They didn't get it right, and therefore the cap splits. So these are, you know, solid pens. They're not just plastic. It is a little bit more than that. It feels lovely to the hand. Matte finish, good quality material. Excuse me a minute, my dog just wants to nip out. Right, so black Makrolon. It's warm to the touch. It's got these, you just about see it on the camera, these sort of longitudinal striations where the Makrolon, once it's been manufactured into a pen, well, not a pen, the component, the cap and the barrel, and the blind cap, as we'll discuss in a little while, and it's basically run against a sort of polishing wheel, sanding wheel, to give it these things by hand all the way around, and you end up with this lovely finish, which is comfortable, really nice to hold, very tactile. So the cap, yeah, flat ends either end at the finials. The cap flares out. There is a step where it meets the barrel. It's a push on, pull off cap. The barrel flares out a little bit in the middle, then tapers down towards the end. Now, uncap it, and you have a metal section, which is inky. Let's just wipe that off there. Okay, so metal section, which is also polished with these same sort of longitudinal striations to match the barrel. There is absolutely no step up. You can't even feel where the section joins the barrel. It is so well made. It is, you know, it's like it's the same material. Wonderful. The section is sort of short, but because of the way that the section tapers into the barrel, I mean, if you want to hold it in the middle where it's girthy, you can. This is a comfortable pen to hold pretty much anywhere. Now, it is metal down here, so you do get the slight coldness to the fingers as opposed to the Makrolon, where it's lovely and warm. So bear that in mind. And I do find I've got quite dry hands. My fingers can slip a bit on this section because the longitudinal stripes go down towards the nib, and you know, it does slide. However, these nibs write so well that you don't have to grip the pen very hard, and it just flows. It really does flow. So let's get on to the cap. Now, in there are sort of little retainers, and they latch on to these two. There's one either side. These silver, just above my thumb there, these two silver ears. or retaining lugs, which are metal. They protrude a little bit from either side of the pen, and yes, you can feel them with your fingers. They're not sharp, but you can feel these little ears. And some people hate that. They say, no, I can feel it. The way that I hold my Lamy 2000s, if I think about it, yes, my thumb is now on one of the ears. I can feel it, definitely. Is it uncomfortable? Absolutely not. Does it bother me? No, it doesn't. And now I think about it, yes, I can also feel it on the underside of this finger here. Does that bother me? No. It's not a step up. I've had pens with step ups from the sections of the barrel which have been way more uncomfortable than this, and I've still not had that much of a problem. So those little retaining lugs keep this cap firmly in place, and I'll just put this close to the microphone because it is quite a satisfying sound. Nice little metallic sound. And these little ears, to be honest, I think form part of the character of this pen. And I actually do find myself absent-mindedly, if I'm writing and then just thinking, I sort of end up caressing these little ears on the pen. So yeah, I like it. There is also, on the barrel, which is almost impossible to see, which one am I using here? Hang on, just check. Yeah, this on the barrel has got ink sorry, there we go. There are ink windows. It's difficult because I've got this pen quite full of ink. There we go, it's quite visible in this region here. I can get this to focus properly. Yeah, there we go. Just above my finger there are ink windows in the barrel which really aren't obvious. They're not ink windows where you're going to be able to see exactly what colour ink you've got in there. It is possible, but they're mainly so that you can hold the pen up to the light with the light source behind it, rather horizontally, and you can see where the ink level is. If it's below half fill, you can see it sloshing around a bit and go, yeah, okay. And when it starts to get really low, then you start to see much more light through the ink window, and you go, oh, maybe it's time for a fill or a clean. So that is that. The nib, 14 karat gold, semi-hooded. So, you know, no flex. Don't go pushing this nib. It's not going to flex. And there is a plastic feed underneath and a filling hole. So this is where the ink gets drawn into the section and the pen. Now, let's talk about the filling system. It's a piston filler. So, where does it fill? There is a blind cap up here. And you can't feel it. And can you even see it? Yeah, just about where above my thumbnail, there's a line going around the pen. And it is that well concealed. It is that well built into the pen. You can't really feel it. You end up turning the end, and then you realise where it is because it unscrews slightly out of the barrel. So to fill the pen, remember the little filling hole? Submerge that below the surface of the ink level in your ink bottle. Turn the blind cap. Now that will unscrew, and that will force the piston down into the pen. And that expels air and, you know, ink if you've got ink in there and you're cleaning it out, things like that. So turn that, piston goes down. Turn it the other way and it closes against the barrel and becomes flush again, and that draws the plunger up in the barrel and draws ink up through the filling hole, through the section and into the barrel of the pen, giving you a fill. So that is it. It's quite effective. Now, taking these pens apart, not recommended. There are videos out there about it. but most people would advise against it, because whilst this is utilitarian, classic Bauhaus design, functional, you know, it's going to do exactly what you want it to do. My God, Lamy over-engineered the interior of this pen. Don't take it apart. I've seen videos where people have taken them apart, and it doesn't go well unless you know exactly what you're doing, because there are an awful lot of weird components in the section and where it holds the nib in place, and there's a lot going on. And if you get some of those components back in the wrong orientation, even if they're just slightly out, the pen just doesn't go back together properly, if at all. So yeah, basically I can see why Lamy are, you know, servicing pens, because quite honestly I wouldn't be comfortable taking one of these pens apart. They are over-engineered inside, but then again, this is what you're paying for. You're paying for a product that stood the test of time, is durable, great. So there we go. That's enough about the actual inside of the pen. I know you want to see the writing sample. Oh, just one other thing. Let's just talk about the colour. Both of these pens are black. Left one's blacker than the other one. And this is the one that it might be older, or it might be that Lamy have done some polishing to this pen. I don't know. But I will tell you about why I love Lamy pens so much. The Lamy 2000 is quite an expensive pen. I'm not willing to pay £150 or whatever they are for a new Lamy 2000. So, being a bit of a grail pen, I kept an eye out on eBay and found an auction for one which had a smashed cap. I mean, the cap was completely crushed. And I thought, well, you know, if I can get it for the right price, I'll be happy. Maybe I can get, you know, a spare cap from somewhere. So I bought the pen. Well, I won the auction. Bought the pen for way less than, you know, anywhere near full price. Happy. Got the pen. Yes, the cap smashed. And had a look at finding a replacement cap. I couldn't find one. Seems that you can't get hold of them. So, bit of an issue there. However, I went onto the Fountain Pen Network, the forum, and noticed that other people had had similar problems, and people were recommending just send the pen over to Lamy. You know, you'll get a replacement cap. I thought, well, you know, I don't have anything to lose. So I inquired with Lamy, and bearing in mind any correspondence with them is almost always in German, fully in German. And they were, you know, they sent an email back saying, thank you very much for your inquiry, basically. Please send the pen to our address in Germany and we'll look into it. So I thought, well, you know, do I waste my money on a pen that is broken, or do I send it to Lamy and risk getting a bill for, I don't know, basically a new pen, or at least a cap? And I thought, well, you know, common sense says that they're just going to replace the cap. You know, what's the top price for a cap? 50 quid? You know, I was happy enough with that if they were going to sort it out that way. So, Lamy, then I sent my pen over to Lamy. Didn't hear anything for a couple of weeks. I think the third week, got an email from them saying that my pen was on its way back to me. So I kept an eye out, and the pen arrived in the post a few days later. And there was some documentation inside with the pen. And the documentation, part of which was in German, but I went through it, and basically what they said is, we've replaced the cap. However, we've also had a look at the pen, and we've dismantled it, given it a thorough clean. We've re-greased the piston, replaced the piston head, done all sorts of other things, repolished the nib, and I think they also repolished the body of the pen. Quite honestly, I don't think any of the other stuff needed doing. It just needed a new cap. So anyway, I was reading all this thinking, okay, so basically they've overhauled my pen. How much is this going to cost me? So I'm turning through the pages of the documentation that they sent, and basically they charged me nothing, absolutely nothing. They did all of that work as part of their customer service for free. And I felt quite a bit guilty about that because, let's face it, I'd bought a known broken pen off eBay. You know, I didn't break it. It wasn't like I'd had the pen for years, and, you know, I'd just bought a knackered pen and sent it to Lamy, basically. And they repaired it and overhauled it to give me a brand new, fully functional pen, basically, for nothing. So all I can say is I was absolutely astonished, and that was what converted me. I'm a massive Lamy fan because of that. So Lamy, thank you very much. You did a great job. Your customer service for me was excellent. So very, very happy. So let's talk about the pen. Yes, it does post, by the way, and it posts really nice and securely, but it becomes a bit of a weird length for me, a little bit too long. I prefer it much more comfortable and much nicer unposted. Let's just compare it to another Lamy pen. Get my Lamy All-Star. There we go. There we go, just a couple of millimeters longer, uncapped. Just less than a centimetre shorter. What about the weight? Well, don't normally do these. I'm going to say that the Lamy 2000 is a very comfortable weight. But for those people who do really need to know what weight this pen is, and this is inked up, remember, 26.5 capped. That's grams, by the way, and uncapped 17.5. So yeah, not a hugely heavy pen, but there's there's enough weight to it for it not to be stupidly light. 22.2 Lamy All-Star, all up capped. So there you go. Right, that's the weighing out of the way. Let's get on to the bit that people really want to know about, and that's the writing experience. So, as I mentioned, I have got two pens. I'm just checking which one's which. There we go. Right, so let's do this. It's impossible to see with the camera light here. It's right in the shadow. Lamy 2000, this is the fine nib. Dogs are kicking off because they think the Tesco's are here. Right, so this. Apologies for that. Just had to stop my dog from going absolutely crazy because he thinks we're getting a delivery. So, what do I think about the fine nib? Well, it's very smooth for a fine. It's it's very nice to write with. Let's just show you something here. It's wet. And these nibs keep up. The nibs and feed really do keep up. So no complaints whatsoever. I mean, remember, it's a hooded nib. You're not going to get line variation. But it's a fine. So there we go. That's the fine nib. Now let's give you an example of the medium nib. That wasn't a skip, by the way, that was my clumsy penmanship. There we go. Yeah, very, very wet. Now this paper, this is it's an Oxford notebook, and I find it's supposed to be fountain pen friendly. It is, but it's not very nice to use. And I find that these nibs, they are smooth, very, very smooth, but they tend to squeak on this paper, which isn't the best. Remember, your pen, ink and paper combo is the writing experience that you're looking for. So you get one wrong, none of it works. So get all three right, it's great. I don't like these notebooks, but that's what I'm using now, because it does show off ink very well. Oh, just quickly make a note of the ink for you as well. Ooh, no. Right, the purple ink in the fine pen is Pure Pens. Now they're a UK pen retailer. Pure Pens, Flower of Scotland. Right, there we go. Pure Pens, Flower of Scotland, which to me is possibly one of my favourite purple inks. I love it. It really is, you know, purple heather, purple thistles. This is the right sort of purple. It's not too blue, and it's definitely not a red purple. Really, really lovely purple. So for the medium nib, now obviously this is one of my favourite pens. It's an absolute classic. Love it. And this ink, I had to pair this pen with something equally as, if you like, iconic. And I know a lot of people love this ink too. Pilot Iroshizuku Tsukio, which is Moonlight, I believe. So, yeah, lovely ink, lovely pen. Very nice combination as far as I'm concerned. So, there we go. Let's just move the two writing samples together. Let's pop this somewhere. There we go. Right, so what else do I need to talk about with the Lamy 2000? Right, well, you've just seen how the fine nib actually looks rather similar to the medium. They are. I must admit, these two writing samples do look quite similar. It doesn't feel like that. The fine nib does feel like a fine, and quite honestly, yes, it's more of a fine than a medium. The medium is, you know, a medium. It is what it is. But let's just go back to the fine. Now, the ink that you put in your Lamy 2000 is absolutely critical to how the pen performs. When I first inked up my Lamy 2000 fine nib, I put Waterman Mysterious Black into it. And it was not a very pleasant experience, writing experience. The pen just didn't seem to perform very well, and it was quite disappointing because I thought, well, you know, this is the Lamy 2000. Why is it not better? You know, you kind of expect it to be slightly better than that. And it wasn't skipping, but it was just too fine, extra fine. Not very nice, not a good writing experience at all. So what did I do? I used up the ink in it and thought, well, do I clean it out? Do I put a different ink in? Which I did. And I put, I think it was Rohrer and Klinkner Leipzig Black, which is, I don't know, surface tension, I don't know, some other property in that ink made the Lamy 2000 fine nib absolutely gush ink. I mean, it was too wet. It was just falling out of the pen basically onto the paper. And it was a much broader line than the fine nib. So whatever ink you put in the fine nib pen certainly is going to be quite critical as to the line width that you get. Some inks seem to behave better in the Lamy 2000 than others. Now I know that a fellow YouTuber, Wasky Squirrel, recommend that you check out his channel if you haven't seen it already. He loves the Lamy 2000. It's one of his everyday carry pens, uses it all the time, and he damaged the nib on his and sent it to Lamy, got it back, and he thought that the fine nib was actually a little bit broader than the fine nib. The fine nib that he received was actually broader than the one that he used to be writing with. And people suggested using Pelican Brilliant Black, or whatever the black ink is, which he found much drier, which is a drier ink, and he found it much more to his taste because the fine nib actually was more like a fine that he was used to. So you need to experiment with your inks in these pens. Obviously don't put anything sparkly in it because you're never going to be able to clean the damn thing out. So that one aside, get that one out of the way right now. The ink that you use is going to be critical as to the writing performance. So one other thing that I do need to talk about is the sweet spot. A lot of people complain about this because the pen has got a sweet spot, the nib has got a sweet spot. If I try and demonstrate this, so this is the medium. Now, normal writing, no issues, it writes. But if you, bearing in mind this is quite a rotund sort of cylinder, it's quite barrelly, you know, and it's quite easy to sort of pick the pen up. And I don't know whether you noticed, but when I did my downstrokes up here, these bits, it looked like I skipped, but actually I couldn't even see where the nib was because the camera's casting a shadow onto the paper and I didn't know what angle the nib was at, and it's the rotation of the nib which causes this sweet spot. So I'll try and do some rotation, and it is quite, it's difficult to recreate. I think the fine nib demonstrates it better because this feels like it has a sweet spot. You do have to accentuate. You do have to overdo it. You really do have to sort of. But sometimes, you know, you end up out of the sweet spot, and you think, hang on a minute, why is the pen sort of writing scratchily? Well, it's not scratchy. It's just dry, and it just, you know, it feels like you're reverse writing. These pens don't write in reverse particularly well. But the sweet spot, yes, it is there, and it is evident. Is it a massive problem? No, not really. If you're used to really broad nibs that write pretty much however you're angling the pen, rotating it between your fingers, yeah, you're gonna find out about the sweet spot using a Lamy 2000 at some point. But is it a massive issue? Not for me. I think for the way that these nibs write, you know, I'm not going to complain about, you know, me being a bit of a numpty and holding the pen at slightly the wrong orientation when I'm rotating. I mean, you know, it's a mistake. You pick up the pen. I do it sometimes with a Jinhao 51A. You know, it's a hooded nib. You can't always see exactly where the nib is if the lighting in the room isn't quite right, and you end up writing with the nib on its side, and it's like, oh, why is, you know, why is this so rubbish? Oh, just to have a quick check of it. Oh yeah, right, okay, rotate it, and it writes perfectly. So, you know, not that big a deal. certainly, I mean, the fine is great, but this medium on other paper other than this Oxford notebook, this, I mean, there's feedback, and I don't like the feedback from this paper. It's supposed to be smooth and it feels smooth, but it's feedbacky and ugh. So yeah. But this nib on even cheap paper, I mean, it feels like you're writing with air. I mean, it's not a case of it writes under its own pressure, as it should do. It's like playing air hockey, you know. You've got this air cushion, you know. The ink, it just glides. It's like a silent hovercraft. Absolutely wonderful. Joy to write with this nib. So there we go. You wanted to know about the Lamy 2000? Well, there's my review. I would also say, you know, a lot of this isn't just personal opinion. These are my thoughts about Lamy and what I think about the actual pen. I love it. It's a great pen. I do apologise if you found this video too long, but quite honestly, I think there was a lot that I wanted to cover in it. Sorry, I just banged the camera. A lot that I wanted to cover, and it's not something that you can just say. It's a design classic. It's 15 centimeters long, it weighs 28 grams, and yes, there's the writing sample. It needed a little bit more than that. I think this pen deserves it. So if you're thinking about pulling the trigger on the Lamy 2000, there's probably a reason why. Now, don't go with peer pressure, because, you know, everyone's different. Some people like Pilot pens. I haven't got into that yet. I've got one Pilot pen, that's it. I thought it was great, but hey. Lamy did it for me with the Lamy 2000 and the customer service. I'm going to try and be as unbiased as I possibly can now. Would I recommend the Lamy 2000 to you as a fountain pen? Yes, absolutely, definitely gets a thumbs up from me. Even though I've already said, you know, I've got a great deal of respect for Lamy. They did a great job for me, and I like the pen because of the design, and it's one of my top 5 pens. That aside, do I recommend it? Yes, absolutely. If you're going to be spending what is mid-price for a fountain pen, yes, you've got to go for this. Okay, it's not colourful, it's not pretty even, but it's a design icon. It's the Lamy 2000. Just get it purely for that. It's an everyday writer. You can write for ages with this. It's a comfortable pen. It's nice in the black Makrolon finish. The nibs are good. If you've got an issue with Lamy nibs, I can pretty much guarantee you'll find that the Lamy 2000 nibs are of a different class altogether. So if you've had a Duff, I don't know, Lamy Studio, Lamy Safari, Lamy All-Star nib, these pens are in a different league. There's a reason that these cost a lot more money, but it's worth it. If you can find a second-hand, good quality used one, yeah, I'd also recommend going down that route. You're going to pick up a pen which is hopefully well cared for. It's a sturdy pen. It does last for years. It's standing the test of time. So there we go. I don't know whether the pen was actually released. I believe it was actually released in 1969. So there we go. You know, it's now 2019 and the pen's still the same. So yeah, there's a reason it hasn't changed, and there's a reason why it is still popular. I'd recommend it to people who wanted to go to, if you like, the next level from, I don't know, spending maybe, I don't know, whatever you spend on a fountain pen, £20, £50, something like that. This is that next step up. It's not beautiful, it's not wonderful, and I'm sure that a lot of people would say, well, no, get a vintage whatever, or go for a sailor, things like that. This is just me. I like European pens, I like Chinese pens. I like the nibs in them. You know, you get medium nibs, so this is what you get. So this, I hope you found this useful. It should have given pretty much anyone enough of an overview to make up their minds whether they want to buy the Lamy 2000 or not. As for the fine and medium nib issue, it's difficult. I wouldn't want to say get a fine nib if you think, you know, because they are wet writers. Would I say get a fine or a medium if you're not too sure which one? Well, do what I do. Get both. You'll find that the fine nib writes fine with some inks, and it writes more like a medium with others. But either way, the nibs are smooth. So you're going to have to just try and use your own judgment on that, I'm afraid. There's not a lot I can say. You know, these are good pens. Think about buying the pen rather than the nib. The nib's kind of a bit of an inconsequential thing. Pick something that you think is probably all right for you. If you always like using medium nibs, get a medium nib. If you like using fines, get a fine. You can always tinker around and use different inks to see if you get the different sort of different qualities when you're writing with that nib, as opposed to actually trying to figure out whether you need a fine, medium or whatever. So, hope you found it useful. Sorry it's been a long one. I hope you're not falling asleep or not got too drunk or too full of tea, anything like that. So, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you next time. Bye.